What do you think it would be like if every community or every school was using the Let Grow approach?
I think there'd be a lot more smiling and laughing. I mean, just as we hear about, when schools are getting rid of phones, the kids are flirting again. There's more laughter in their halls. There's more noise in the lunchroom. Similarly, you'd have kids really excited to come to school because they were going to see more friends because they've met friends in different grades. I think you'd see something that looks a little bit more like your own childhood in terms of kids doing stuff on their own, having fun.
Welcome to This Helps, where we sit down with the world's leading helpers to find out how they're helping and also what helps them. By the end of this episode, you'll have practical tools to improve your own mental health. I'm Marlon Morgan, founder and CEO of Wellness Together, an organization dedicated to improving the mental health of thousands of people every day. Join me and my insightful Gen Z co-host Hannah Ravitch as we sit down for authentic and vulnerable conversations with people dedicated to helping others. What helps? Let's find out. We're excited to talk to Lenore Skenazy today. She wrote an article back in 2009 called Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. It created a bunch of controversy. She had to go on all the daytime shows, and people called her America's worst mom. She wrote a book after that called Free Range Kids, and the book sort of turned into this movement that says kids are smarter and stronger than our culture gives them credit for. Lenore and three other people, including the author of The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, started this organization called Let Grow, essentially promoting childhood independence. We're so excited to have Lenore here today. All right, Lenore Skenazy, thank you so much for being here on This Helps.
Thank you. I hope I help.
Well, see, I think you already have in a lot of ways. I think you've helped a lot of kids experience their childhoods to the fullest. And I think you help a lot of parents feel less worried and enjoy parenthood to the fullest. And so before we get into that, I want to acknowledge that we have not only Hannah joining today, as usual, but we have Brittany Stone, a fellow friend and therapist, and actually the first person who let me know about Lenore's work. So I'm so happy to have Brittany. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for recommending me.
Yeah.
And Lenore, we would like to ask you to start with your perfect self-care day. It's a 24-hour day.
God, I never think this way. Wow. Okay.
We want to know what you do because you are a helper, and we want to know what helps the helpers. A lot of people listening to this are either educators or in mental health or parents or all three. So what helps you?
Oh my God. So are we talking like what's a wonderful day that makes me feel happy, or like I'm so depressed I have to barely drag myself out of bed, but I have blank to look forward to?
It's not that second one.
Okay.
It is.
Although those happen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It can be whatever you want it to be. You can control every minute of this 24 hours. And so if it would feel good to get a relief from already feeling sad, then you can do that. Or if you want to just say, here's what I would do on my perfect day, here's who I would hang out with.
Oh, I have a feeling my perfect day is everyone else's perfect day too. I get up, I go to my local bakery, I have a delicious cup of coffee with a friend, and then I say goodbye to the friend. And then well, I guess not everybody hops on the subway. Then I hop on the subway and I go into Manhattan and I have a cup of coffee with another friend, maybe go to the bathroom at some point. Then I have lunch with a friend. Then I maybe go someplace.
You're the first person to ever include using the restroom, which actually makes a
There you
lot of
go.
sense.
Oh my God. It's just, you just have to imagine that it's a day of sequel friends, like friend and then another friend and then another friend. And in between, either with a friend or by myself, I go to a thrift shop. Is that really, mundane? And then I'll read for a little while and I won't get sleepy. Wouldn't that be an amazing day? I'd read a book that I love. It's a novel. I love the characters. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to have a happy ending, but it's not a stupid book. And then I see another friend. I come back to my wonderful neighborhood and I wander around, and there's always a flea market going on, and there's always several bakeries again. and a fruit stand or two on my way back to my apartment. And then I come and bake. And then I eat the dough, and then I eat whatever I baked. And at some point, I say hello to my husband, and we eat dinner together. And then I'm awake enough, which is so rare, to read some more. Or he figures out how to turn on our 15 remotes to get whose line is it anyway up on on
Oh,
TV.
bringing that one back. Okay, that's
Yeah, yeah,
good. Drew
yeah.
Carey, a little Wayne Brady.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
Wayne Brady. Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes. Wayne Brady, are you watching? I
Yeah.
love you. That's it. And then I do then the New York Times, somebody said New York Times has become like a game app. And I hate to say it, but in my life it sort of is. And
Mhm.
so I do my Wordle and a couple of others and drift off to a perfect night of sleep where I don't wake up in the middle of the night for 3 hours like last night and not know what to
Oh,
do.
Mm.
oh, if you get that perfect night of sleep, what time do you go to bed and what time do you wake up?
These are strange questions. I'm usually asked, why did you let your son ride the subway alone?
Nope.
I
Not yet. Not yet.
ideally, around 11 and wake up around 7. And then I live near a cool neighborhood that's Chinese and Bangladeshi. And
Uh-huh.
I go to the park there and hear a lot of different songs playing as different groups of people do their different exercises and I do mine. And then I pass another bakery. Are you catching a theme? And
This is an incredible day and a an admiral amount of baked goods.
yeah,
Yeah. Did I say admiral or
yeah. But I
admirable?
think you meant
Yeah.
admirable.
Not
How about
not the armed
a blank
forces.
ton?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Navy here.
Right.
I appreciate you letting us know kind of what you would do on this day because it says so much about a person. And, I got from that you appreciate so many different cultures. You love living in a place with a lot going on. You also, I would say, even the most New York loving New Yorkers don't often put the subway as part of it. So
Gotta
that
get
was,
places,
yeah,
I live in
yeah,
Queens.
that was
Manhattan's over there.
wonderful. And that was nice and realistic. I've been criticized for this before for talking about food too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. I need to know about these baked goods. I need to know what are you getting, and then I want to know what you baked.
I'm really old at this point, and I was always afraid of baking bread. I thought that I literally thought it'd be too hard to knead it, and I thought that there'd be like dough and flour everywhere. So for decade upon decade upon decade, I did not bake bread. And then I was talking to a friend, as I do, and she gave me a challah recipe, and I actually committed it to memory because it sounded so easy. And now you cannot stop me from baking challah. But in between, this weekend, I made scones, I made peanut butter chocolate chip cookies and I made bread. So just basically carbs. Right.
That all sounds incredible, and I can tell you that I would be even larger if I lived anywhere near
I
you.
can't see
So
how
yeah.
large you are. You're just ahead.
Well, I got a big round face, and I think that gives you a clue. But I love that menu, and it's hard for me to stop thinking about the chocolate peanut butter cookies before
I can show you.
I.
There's one right there.
Oh my gosh, they're
Hang
right
on.
there. Let me see.
Here's the last one in this batch.
Oh, that looks incredible. If
Delicious.
those of you who can't see this, it looks like the most homemade, chunky, like you might not know
Full
there
of
was
chocolate?
peanut. Oh, it's so much
There's a
chocolate.
lot going on.
That's a
Yeah.
great ratio. That is
Mm.
incredible.
Now
Well,
you know.
thank you.
That's going to be door dashing
Yeah.
chocolate chip cookies after this.
Screw the kids. Let's
Yeah.
talk about peanut butter chocolate chip cookies.
My son would love that, actually. He would listen to that episode. So, Lenore, you brought up something earlier. You let your son ride the subway at 9 years old to let you have some context. I have an 11-year-old son and a 2.5-year-old son. So, I've, like everyone does, I've been thinking about reading your book and thinking about everything that, how would I do it that way? How would I do, could I have done that? Was it brave? Was it scary? Was it not smart to do? And, he ended up okay, but you had a lot of criticism for that. Tell us about how this all started.
Oh, okay. It's a million years ago. Let's establish that. The 9-year-old is 26, so it's been a minute, as they say. And but way back then, when he was a fourth grader, and our older son was a sixth grader, uh, Izzy, the 9-year-old, started saying, "Please take me someplace I haven't been before, and let me find my own way home by the subway." That was just his idea. If I'd known my entire career depended on it, I would have made him take the subway. It's like, we need something. Come on, I
Yeah.
gotta, newspapers are dying. I gotta come up with something else. But it was his idea. And one day, after my husband and I had discussed it, we decided yes. So I took him to Bloomingdale's fancy department store in a
Mhm.
fancy zip code, which sits on top of a subway station.
Mhm.
And so I left him there and I went home a different route. And sure enough, he knew it was the day. It wasn't like he was just being abandoned. This was the day. And he found his way into the subway. He was on the wrong track. He asked a guy, "Which way should I go?" He talked to a stranger. The stranger said, "You're on the wrong side." Went over to the right side. He took the train down, had to take a bus across town, and came into our apartment very proud and grateful, I think, grateful that we'd let him do this, that we'd let him have this adventure that he felt he was ready for. And I'd say equally important, we thought that could be fine. And so it's him being allowed to trust himself and his readiness. And we trusted him. We trusted our city. We trusted the stranger who we didn't know, who we talked to, that we didn't see. And I wrote about it actually like a month and a half later, because it didn't strike me as that big a deal when he did it, but I needed a column like a month and a half later. So I wrote it, and then 2 days later I was on every possible television show. And the thing that had me puzzling for years was, how come most of the interviewers would talk about it in a sort of neutral way, or, "Oh, that's interesting," or, "Oh, were you scared?" But then at some point they'd sort of come in for the kill and they'd say, "But how would you have felt if he didn't come home?"
Oof.
And it isn't oof. It's a stomach flipping question. And it took me a long time to figure out why they were asking it. And why did it just seem to come up almost just inevitably in so many of these discussions. And I finally, the rationale that I've sort of landed on is that was the real crime, was not that I put him in the subway. The subway is interesting and it's New York City and everybody's seen videos and movies and stuff set in the subway. But the idea of letting your son do something by himself was not something. It's like the bathroom. It's not something that we talk about. There's something a little shameful about it at this point. And actually admitting out loud that I'm going to trust my son and I'm going to trust the odds, and those are good enough for me, has become taboo. You really almost have to second guess anytime you're thinking of giving your kids any kind of freedom. And I hear it today. And because I'm so attuned to it, it strikes me as really fascinatingly dystopian, and it strikes everyone else as like, well, that's a normal question. Like, I was talking to a mom a couple of weeks ago who wrote to me, and then I ended up calling her. She'd started a Let Grow. So Let Grow is the nonprofit that I run now. Right?
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that.
Right, we'll talk about it. But anyway, so she called to say that she was running a little Let Grow play club at her home, which is a suburb of, I can't remember if it was Billings or Bozeman, but it was a suburb of a city in Montana. And I don't think the entire state of Montana has as many people as I have here in Queens. So she would gather the children of 3 different families, including her kids, and they were playing on the lawn. And she did it for 3 weeks in a row for 1 hour each time, which just shows you how little freedom kids get, that this is a big deal. But I was glad that she was doing it. And she said, and the parents would watch, right? Of course, they just watch. They don't know that they're ever allowed not to be there. And so she delicately suggested, how about the next time? This will be the 4th time in the suburb of Billings or Bozeman that we have these 7 or 8 kids meeting together. How about the next time we don't watch? And one of the dads said, okay, but only if it's in the backyard, because the front yard. And then he said to her, if something terrible happened to my child, I would kill myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I report that is because that has become normalized. That kind of fear and almost like pre-guilt
Hmm.
sort of haunts parents when they're trying to decide anything about whether they'll let their kids do almost anything, like walk 30 feet ahead of them, or go to the store, wait by themselves at the bus stop in the morning with 3 other kids. We really can't imagine our kids doing anything without us supervising them and it being safe.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm actually just writing another piece now. Like I paused to come to you guys now, writing another piece about how a mom um, recently was arrested because she took one son to the doctor while her other son, who's turned 11 over the weekend,
Hmm.
um, instead of playing at home, walked himself to downtown. And downtown is a town of 370 people. They have a church, a post office, a dollar store, and a gas station. And somebody saw him alone and called the police, and the police came, and they ended up telling the mother, "Don't you realize anything terrible could have happened?" And
Hmm.
so her crime was that she didn't imagine, I mean, she didn't actually even expect him to walk to town, but she didn't think that was the worst thing in the world, and neither do I. But but the crime is not having the imagination of imagining the very worst. How could you have, how could you think that your son could possibly be okay when you're not with him? Anything bad could happen. And the, the flamboyant fantasies of, death and dismemberment and rape and, cannibalism, whatever people are thinking in their heads, is allowed to make decisions for other people, including law. Like she's facing criminal charges because she didn't know where he was for an hour. And not knowing where your kid is, okay, that's something that happens to everybody at some point. But how come you're allowed to fantasize the very worst case scenario and then act as if that's what almost happened or that's what could happen? And
Sure.
that's what the question was to me too. How would you have felt if he was kidnapped, raped, and murdered? It's like, well, I don't think that way, and that's the crime. You must think that way now. If you're not thinking that way, there's something wrong with you. And I say, no, there's something wrong with a culture that is saying if my kid is playing in the suburbs of Billings on the front lawn instead of the back lawn, something so terrible is going to happen that I'm going to have to shoot myself. That's
Mm.
such a strange thought pattern that it's kept me going for 16 years because I don't want parents to be burdened that way. It's an OCD-ish thought that the second I'm not with them, something terrible will happen and it's all my fault. And so I'm happy to be talking to you guys because you're therapists
Yeah.
and maybe you've seen this. And if so, I'd love to hear your theories on where it came from and how you fight it when you hear it from some of your patients.
I'd love to hear, Brittany, your response just as when you first heard about Lenore and writing that column, and then subsequently reading the book, which I definitely want to get to. What were your feelings, thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was trying to remember as you were talking, Lenore, if I knew about the story of your son Izzy taking the subway when I first got your book. I don't think I did. I think I was reading other books along a similar line at that
There's a
time.
lot.
Yeah, and there were
I
some
get
good
one a
ones.
week. Like, wow, this sounds like me. I sound like them.
But I remember reading, I think I remember it was the summer I was on maternity leave and I specialized working with children at that time in my private practice. And I had a 4-year-old and was on maternity leave with my second baby. I have 3 boys.
Oh,
Um, and I remember reading it and just really resonating with it as a mom and a therapist of young kids and how I didn't think so much about what the parents were going through with the anxiety that you and I were talking about and what was fueling that, but more the gift of having kids grow up with this sense of self-efficacy and being able to build community for themselves and all the things that I could really resonate with in your book and that were important to me as a mom and that I really saw lacking with a lot of the kids that I worked with where they didn't know their neighbors, there weren't safe people that they spoke with in their communities, or there weren't people maybe there were safe people, they weren't, speaking with them and building that, and just the strain that it puts on families, and the strain that it was putting on the kids, and then just all the benefits that were being missed. So that's how I became introduced to your work. And then I know I think Marlon, we had chatted about that.
Mhm.
And then I followed you, Lenore, for a long time. And then I heard about your Let Grow organization, and then I reached out to your organization, met Andrea there and talked a little bit about that, because the idea of having that sort of upstream approach at school was so interesting with what you all were doing. So followed that more. And then a lot of the other researchers and folks that I think you work with too. I didn't think so much about what the parents were dealing with, other than just kind of like the norms that are happening and what like the cultural expectations or norms are for parents, but more what kids, I was more looking at from their lens, what they're going through and how we're seeing that show up.
What's kind of interesting and maybe prophetic is that about a year ago, the Surgeon General put out a big report about how anxious and depressed children are, right? And then recently put out another report on how anxious and depressed parents are. I'm like, don't you see? It's not a coincidence. If you have to spend every single second of your kid with them, watching every jump of the rope, every, bounce of the ball, because otherwise something terrible will happen and you'll never forgive yourself, you're bored. And the kids are growing up micromanaged. And also the real problem, and this is Wendy Mogul, who has this great quote that I love. She wrote The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. And she said, look at anything up close and you will notice its flaws. And we are so up close with our kids now. We're driving them everywhere. We're watching all the practices and the meets, and we're required to sign their reading log, which means that we're watching them read and we're doing their homework with them and repeat ad infinitum. And then the weekends are travel soccer and the swim meets. And so we are always with them. And I know this from me meeting with my kids, and they're in their 20s. When you're with them, you see what they're doing wrong. You sigh in despair. Oh my God, you're looking at your phone. How dare you? Aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you looking up when you're crossing the street? They're not looking up because they're with me, and I'm shepherding them across the street like I did when they were 3-year-olds. And so when you're with your kids, you can't stop helping them, suggesting things, chiding them, wondering what did I do wrong, and just sort of evaluating them all the time. So they're micromanaged, you feel bad, and it's this unending, infinity loop of like, why aren't you doing it this way? Stop bothering me. Well, if you did it this way, but stop bothering me. And so the only way that kids can feel that they are trusted enough and smart enough to deal with some things is if we're not there. And you know what? That is how they get trusted. And that is how they get smart. Because when we're not there to help them every single second of the way, or make a clever suggestion, or, optimize their time, or why did you try it this way, honey? Or why aren't you having your kid help my kid? If you're with your kids, you inevitably will be drawn into whatever they're dealing with. And because you're an adult, you will try to fix it. So you have to get away from them so that they learn how to become adults by fixing things on their own. And one of the things you hear all the time, the phrase is make smart choices or make good choices. And actually you want your kids to make stupid choices, not drastic choices, not jumping off a cliff choice, but like being mean to somebody. And so then nobody's nice to him. And then he realizes next time I better not hog the ball, or going home the wrong way and it takes twice as long, or, running so fast that they fall. Ouch. I better look out for tree stumps. I mean, you want a kid to grow up, aware and self-actualized and confident. And they can't do that if they're basically holding your hand the entire time. And it's not our fault. It's just human to want to fix things or to be upset and a little disappointed. And so you can't be with them all the time. So you won't be fixing things, and so you won't be always disappointed. And the fun, the excitement of being a parent is when you find out that they did something great without you, Oh, you put away your plate when you were at your friend's house, or you organized the game by yourself, or you thought to buy me a present. It's, thank God you noticed that it's Mother's Day. So you have to be away from them so that you can get the dopamine hit of look at my kid, as opposed to look at my kid.
Hannah, what you're hearing this, you're not too far from Izzy's age. So I'm thinking, if you go back to, what was that, Lenore, 2011?
No, it's like 2009, I guess.
2009. Okay. So Hannah, you were like
I
9 or
would have been
10.
9. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What would that have been like for you at that age? Describe, you know, I know you're not from New York, but
Right.
tell us about what that sounds like.
I mean, to be completely honest, it sounds scary to me.
Hmm.
But you're not here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that is so different than where I grew up. I grew up in California, in San Diego. So,
Right. Surfing
um,
sounds scary to me.
I've never surfed either, but
Mhm.
it sounds fun to me. It does appeal to me. I think I do feel like even now that feels scary. But then I do also have that curiosity of, especially if I put myself in that situation, if I lived there, if I was already exposed to the subway, it
Hmm.
makes sense. Like that would be what I know. If I, was told, okay, walk home from school, I would find
It's
my
like
way
riding your
home.
bike. Yeah. Right.
Totally,
Right.
totally. But as you were talking, I was also thinking about how I can look back at, getting lost in the grocery store, quote unquote, getting lost in the grocery store. Like I couldn't find my mom and my mom couldn't find me. And then I remember not feeling much of anything in that moment. But then one of the store associates had to, come and find me. And that always felt really scary because then I was like, oh no, like I did something wrong. And now my
Hmm.
mom is feeling scared. And now I'm like, well, I don't want to do that in the future. So, like, I'll stay with her.
Did your mom go to prison?
No.
Okay, just checking. Just checking.
Did you say how old was I?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember, but I probably 7.
Right.
Um,
We all
like,
remember those times. I mean, I bet everybody here on this call remembers a time when they couldn't, when they were lost or something. And that's something that parents don't want their children to experience. And it's like, that's part of being a human. At some point, you
mhm.
will be separated from your tribe, right?
Mhm.
And Peter Gray, who's one of the co-founders with me of Let Grow, he wrote the book Free to Learn, Love, Love, Love Him. He talks about how, childhood is a time when you're sort of knitting your life together. You're becoming who you are. And there's the good things. There's loving parents, there's a decent parent or adult in your life with whom you are firmly attached. And there's nice things. There's a good teacher. There's a wonderful coach. There's a birthday party. There's a best friend. And then there's the bad stuff. Right. So there's all this stuff. I consider it sort of like the warp of life. It's all the good stuff. And then there's bad stuff. There's a friend who's mean to you. There's a time you got lost and scared. There's somebody who wouldn't play with you. And all together, you are weaving this nice, sturdy net so that when you fall, it holds you. But if there's nothing bad, you're going to fall through those holes because you haven't dealt with it. I mean, nobody in the history of the world has grown up never getting lost, never feeling betrayed by a friend, never feeling lonely, never feeling dumb, or, fat or skinny or ugly or short. So it's just to be part of humanity, you have to experience not horrible, not trauma, but disappointment, frustration, and some bad days.
Hmm.
So trying to prevent those from happening is sort of like, oh my God, she shouldn't have to chew her food. Let me just pulverize it all. It's like, no,
Mm.
actually, at some point that looks really good. No, no, honey, you could choke.
It
So
just reminds me, Lenore, you brought up the Surgeon General earlier, and he had written that incredible book together
about loneliness, yeah.
about the
Mhm.
loneliness
Yeah.
epidemic, and got a chance to talk to him briefly about that and kind of what led to that, and mentioning that he actually wrote it and put it out in 2020, but the news cycle obviously was dominated by something else, so he re-released it. And I think that the even from the beginning of our call, when with how many friends you met at bakeries, it says something about what you value and what has kept you sort of happy in life and what gives you meaning in life.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm, really social. The thing is that what Peter Gray writes about is the importance of mixed age free play.
Hmm.
And that's something that kids don't get a lot of. I mean, that's why that woman was trying to organize a little play group in front of her house in Montana. It's what we have is we have we live in a wealthy country with a few kids per family, I'd say, and that means that there's a lot of money that can be spent on either child or any of the kids. And, you know, there's a way we live in a capitalist country. What can I say? And I love it, but it means that, like, rather than saying, oh, your kid's gonna be fine just going out and playing with your friends, it's like, why not teach them, how to do lacrosse or chess or kumon? So there's always adult organized activities that are presented as a more enriching, more valuable experience for your child, and more frictionless too. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. I sent my kids went to soccer and baseball and all these things. But there's something that they're missing, and that is the agency of the kids making something happen. And so what we recommend is that Let Grow, the nonprofit, recommends two things that's for schools to do. And one of them is called the Let Grow Play Club, where we just say, keep your school open for mixed age, no devices, free play. And by free play, I mean there's an adult there crouching in the corner, scrolling her phone, maybe smoking. I don't care. She's just not involved, right? She's just there with the EpiPen. But the kids are organizing their own games. They're making up, what they want to do. I heard from one woman the other day who said that why we have to not organize games for kids is that her kids were at the park and there were these slats and there were tiny little pieces of grass growing up between the slats. And the kids came back and they had been playing and having fun. What were they doing? Oh, Mom, we were head lice sucking the blood out of the hairs growing through the slats. And I'm like, that's not a game that most parents would come up with.
You haven't heard of that one?
No. It's I've lived it. Let me put it that way, right?
That's like a PSA. That's great.
There you go. The point is that when kids are free to make things up and do things, they will come up with stuff that we won't. And then they have to argue, that's really gross. I don't want to do that. No, it's fun. Watch. And so they have to communicate. They have to compromise. They have to get buy-in. They have to read the other kids. And these are all the social emotional skills that we're worried that kids aren't getting. Well, of course not. You've sucked them out of kids' lives. And then you're trying to give them back with like a worksheet in the morning on empathy, or, let's sit on the rug. And I mean, I looked up the some of the SEL curriculum that struck me as ridiculous, like breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And these are all great things if you're a middle-aged woman and you're going crazy with your job and your marriage and your kids, but not for a 7-year-old. A 7-year-old, you could just throw them outside with a cardboard box and they will be much better an hour later without a breathing exercise, without a mindfulness exercise, without a stitch of yoga. They're just going to be better. And we keep trying to give kids all these adult activities that we forget, like they're primed. They are programmed by nature, by Mother Nature, by evolution to want to play. They will do anything to play. I was watching a kid, I can't remember, I guess he was on the subway. This shows you where I spent all my time. And there weren't a lot of people, so there was a long bench, and he was going boom, 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 boom. And it was just, he was bored, and he came up with a way of entertaining himself, and he was moving his body, and he was having a great subway ride. And it was kind of fun to watch him too, and he wasn't bothering anyone. And so much of kids' days are, sit down, we're going to learn something, and then we're going to drive you somewhere, and you're going to learn something else from an adult. And there's not a lot of this. And kids need more of that, and they especially need it with other kids. And so it strikes me as so blatantly obvious. If we took all the, liquid out of kids' lives and it's like, what could help them? How about yoga?
Yeah.
Maybe they need a mindfulness exercise. It's like,
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's, why aren't we seeing that? And I don't know, drives me nuts. So hoping that people will see.
Lenore, how much of modern
Have you drunk today?
How
Oh my
much-
God.
how much is modern life interfering with people's ability to kind of think, have common sense, and maybe recognize threats that are important and happen a lot, but kind of quiet down the ones that are less present.
Yeah. I mean, we have a, we have a culture that reminds us of very unlikely dangers and is happy to ignore some that are, pretty common. And the ones that we're reminded of are, the most catastrophic, the ones we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, the idea of a kid being kidnapped by a guy in a white van. I would say I would drive a Prius, a blue Prius, but right, maybe a Tesla. Got to update these, update my jokes. So here's the deal. The
Glad we could
chances-
work these out with you. This is
Yes,
good
really.
stuff.
That's a therapy session. You guys
Yeah.
are therapists. I'm like, I've been telling this joke for a while. Prius doesn't work as well. Okay, use Tesla. Good. How about those weird cars that look like triangles now? Have you seen them?
Which,
They look like they
the
look like
Cybertruck?
this. They're like this shape. They're
Yeah.
really ugly.
It's the
what are they?
Cybertruck. Yeah.
It's a Cybertruck?
It's a Tesla. Yeah. It's a real Mad Max rough one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one today and it was stealing a child. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I did see one today. So here's the deal. Your brain works like Google. And so you ask a question and up come results. And if you're asking, where can I get tacos in Lenore's neighborhood? Up come, the Birria truck plate, that started the whole Birria taco craze. And that's
Yeah.
on 77th. Or you go here, go to Lola's. And those are relevant results. And if I ask my brain, is my kid safe at the bus stop? Up comes Eitan Pates, taken from a bus stop in 1979. Up comes J.C. Dugard, taken from a bus stop in 1989.
Mhm.
And those are easy to remember because they're dramatic. They have stories, they have video. I've heard about them at this point for 50 years about the Eitan case. And because they come up so easily, your brain has something called the availability heuristic, which is the more available a thought is, the more common we think it is. And so because our brain comes up with these scary, episodes from, over the course of an entire country, over the course of 50 years, there's going to be some horrible stories. Up they come and we think, well, I can't let my kid go to the bus stop. What about Eitan? What about JC? And so we don't do it. And then gradually modern life gets to the point where you see a bus stop and there's 4 kids and 5 parents in the morning. And I remember asking a guy who walked his 7-year-old to the bus stop every day in suburban DC, because we were talking about, well, what do you do for a living? And I said, all right, why do you walk her there? He said, it's like 2 blocks from his house. And he said, oh, I have no idea. And he didn't know. It wasn't that he thought it was dangerous. They lived in this nice neighborhood. It wasn't that he thought his kid was going to run into the street. It wasn't that he thought that she was being stalked by murderers. It just had become the norm.
Everyone else does it.
Everyone does it. Nobody asks. And then, to a certain extent, I do think that because we are lonely, this is one of the ways we do see people. If you're taking your kid to soccer, I did this too. The soccer's boring, but it's fun to talk to the moms, right?
Of course.
So part of it is that there's the worries and there's the norms. And part of it is that's how your social life is organized. And pretty soon, seeing a kid by themselves means that somebody's calling 911 because there's a child out there. I don't see anybody minding him. I guess he's in danger and the parent is bad.
You brought up social emotional learning earlier, and I thought that was a great point, that we keep them safe and sort of remove any distress tolerance they could build, and then ask them to, the most stressful thing we ask them to do is like, imagine what empathy would be like if you could actually have a chance to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you can, wear Google glasses and see it in 3D. There's a child being empathic. Yeah. What can I say? I'm just trying to renormalize a little bit of what childhood involved, I'd say, for all of human history until very recently. So there's the idea of, it's an easy way to bring back play is to have a time and space set aside for play at school, the Let Grow Play Club. And I really think of that as like a wildlife preserve for childhood. It's like you're not going online, right? And you're not going to ballet. You're just going with some friends and some chalk and a cardboard box. And the other thing we're trying to renormalize is letting go of your kids so that they do something on their own. Doesn't have to be a subway ride. But it could be going to another aisle at the store and coming back, with the cornflakes. And the way we do that is we recommend that schools do something we call the Let Grow experience. It's free. It's just this homework assignment that teachers assign the kids that says, go home and do something new on your own with your parents' permission, but without your parents. And it's really an assignment for the parents, right? I mean, the kid is thinking, oh, I'd like to walk to the store. I want to go get an ice cream, or maybe I'll get my hair cut. And the parent is going, ooh, 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 and then like, are you letting your kid go? Yeah, it's a stupid homework assignment. Oh, right. And then you let the kid go. And it's only by letting the kid go that you let the kid go. You can't keep thinking about it. You must be pushed to put the cart before the horse. Let them go before you're ready to let them go. Because then when they come home, you are rewired. As excited as Izzy was to come home, I got to take the subway or whatever. It's like, oh, now he can take the subway. Oh, that was not so hard. Oh, he's ready for that. We're ready for that. And it allows you to do it the next time. There's no next time if you're only in your head, because you never get out of your head. And so I'm talking to therapists, I have to put in a plug for independence turns out to be so bracing that it is being used. It was used in a pilot study as therapy for kids with a diagnosis of anxiety. And Brittany, you're nodding along. Maybe you read about this, right?
I did. Yeah. The independence therapy. I know. Well, I think Peter Gray also had written about that, and is along with the lines, really the same, exact same with the play therapy studies that are coming out, and opportunities for independence, free play, risky play, like risky within the caveat of
risky with quotes, right?
Yes. Safe enough to not, have parents be thrown in jail for it or whatever. But yeah, I did see that about independence therapy. And I think that went into a lot of the research that we put behind one of our programs called Laughing Together Here, which is using improv techniques to strengthen mental health skills. And we spent a lot of time researching that program as we built it out last year with Chris Gethard, who works with us here at Wellness Together, which is really fun.
I saw his play. Is he like he did the one-man show here in New York City?
Yeah, career suicide. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he's done a few
fantastic.
now.
Yeah.
Father and the Son was his last one last year.
Yeah, so
That's
Chris
cool.
Gethard came on board. Him and Marlon, you have more information about how that all started, but him and I worked on building out this program of ours called Laughing Together, which uses improv to practice these mental health skills. But as we were doing so much research last summer about it, it was like, we used to call these play skills. This is play. This is independence building. Now
play is improv, right?
Yeah, and it is mental health skill building. Those things are all connected. And I think that's one of the things that resonates a lot with your work and your writing. And I think too, that is what goes into me having a little empathy, as you were talking about, for the parents and the anxiety that goes into chasing around your kids and following them so closely, paired with Dr. Murthy's, article that came out around parenting and the anxiety that parents are facing. And he talks in there in some depth about, the stresses of childcare and lack of community, isolation that really goes into parents having to shoulder so much, financial concerns, and, the economy, all of these different pieces that compile. And when people are stressed and anxious, they are more likely to see non-threatening things as threats, right? So as they're parenting their kids. And then when you're already so tight and so stressed, especially as a parent, I can relate to this still with the age my kids are. You're just like, if things you're jumpy, things are a little more stressful and they grab your attention faster, you're going to respond a little more faster than if you were parenting in just a peaceful state. Yeah.
The hypervigilance piece. Yeah. But is it hypervigilance, or is it just a normal reaction to all the stuff we're seeing and the ways people are using? And Laura, you talk a lot about in the book, people try to sell parents things constantly by scaring the I was thinking, because we do bleep some cuss word.
Right.
We'll say it, scaring the shit out of them. In addition to that, being raised by a single mom who went back to school to become a nurse when she was an LVN, she went back to school to be an RN. So she was working full time. It was just me and her. And so she would be so tired. I don't know how she did it, but we have a saying in our family, and I ended up, my brother now he wasn't around then. He was born when I was 12, but we have a saying in our family, because anytime we would do something sort of like roughhousey or asked to do something that my mom maybe didn't want to do, she didn't have the energy for it, which I get it. I don't have the energy for it now. And we have a 2-parent household, but the thing she would say here in California, Kaiser is a big thing. It's
I
the
know,
biggest
my sister used to
HMO.
work there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So the thing that, being in the Bay Area, she would say, I'm not going to Kaiser tonight. You can't do that. And so I literally use that now with our 11-year-old. I'm like, nah, I don't think so, man. I'm so tired. It does become about me, my own anxiety. He was jumping off half the stairs onto a giant beanbag, which is probably fine. But I literally said, I heard my mom's voice just being like, and I said it, I'm not going to Kaiser. Do something else. So what do you tell a parent who's it's like overwhelmed, anxious?
What
What
do I
would
tell a parent who's
help me?
overwhelmed, anxious?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going back to what I said before. One of the reasons we're so overwhelmed and anxious is because we're with them. If your son was jumping into a pile of leaves and you weren't around because it was at the park and he was with 3 friends, you would not be saying, "Oh, don't do that. It's too scary. I can't stand it. Oh my God," right? Because he'd be someplace else. So one of the things, I have a friend named Chris who just explained this to me well. He said when, back in the day, there were 3 different worlds. There was the kid world, you and your friends on your bikes or going to the park or playing ball or playing Barbies or whatever it was. And then there's the adult world, the boring, boring adult world where parents are talking all the time. I'm bored with my own adult world, talking about politics and who's having a procedure and, how are they doing and what are you investing in? All the stuff that adults talk about that kids don't care about. And then there's family world, which was maybe you had family dinners, or maybe you had, church, or maybe you had vacations together. And when you have 3 worlds, everybody's got what they need, right? Kids have time with kids where nobody's saying, "Watch out, you're going to hurt yourself. Watch out, you're going to hurt. Oh my God, don't do that. Oh my God, no, no, no." And the kids are not listening to it. And then she had to have another procedure because the pus was oozing. Nobody has to listen to that, right? Right. And then you
Yeah.
still have time together where you get to know your parents and they get to know you, but they don't have to know everything about, who your friends are and what you're doing. And did you finish your last chicken nugget? And why did you get a B minus? I mean, there was a little breathing room between these entities. And it allowed for everybody to be a little less anxious because the kids weren't micromanaged and the parents weren't expected to micromanage, which allowed them time to drink a beer or read a magazine or, scroll through Instagram. So it just feels like the demand that we must spend every second with our kids is really, when you get to it, the problem, right? And that's why independence therapy is therapy, because the parent has to learn how to let go. The kid realizes that the parent trusts them and that they can do some things on their own. And it really changes the entire dynamic. Instead of you being this, wounded sparrow that I must cup in my hands and take to school and take home and help with their homework and also regurgitate a worm into its mouth. It's a weird analogy. Instead of that happening, you have a life and your parents see you have a life and your parents have a life. And it's okay for you to be tired and say, "Go outside and play. I'm too tired to watch you." Right? I mean, why should you be expected to be a superhuman who has a job and then spends another 8 hours supervising and enriching and chiding and high-fiving your kids? It's just too much.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It I can't get over, if I went to go lay down and I was already tired and anxious and I don't watch Law and Order, but my wife loves it. So I'm constantly hearing in the back of my mind, or those terrifyingly interesting and gross stories, but I would try to lay down and I would just keep thinking like, okay, I'm going to get woken up out of a sound nap. And, it's going to be best case scenario, broken arm. Worst case scenario, someone else wakes me up and says, "You got to come here right now." Like, those are all real things I'm thinking when you're talking about this.
It's what I call worst first thinking. It's going to the worst case scenario first and proceeding if it's likely to happen. The only thing I've seen that change it, you guys are the therapists, but the only thing that changes this fantasy is reality, right? And the reality is when you let go, it turns out to be fine. And if my kids have had broken arms, it's bad, but it's not the end of the world.
Well,
right?
if you can't tell, this is my therapy right now. I have lured you here
I
to
know.
try to get
Good.
my
Okay.
own.
No. Take this, my body, and eat. Just go forth and spread the word. That sounds good. Don't take
Wonderful.
this, my body, and eat.
I do wonder though if there is somewhere in between, because a big observation that I have as a mom surrounded by other moms doing life a lot, having friends over in the kitchen while the kids are running all over the place or making food, is that there's somewhere in between, like over parenting or being too quick to jump in, or I think intensive parenting. That's
Yeah, right. The new
right.
word, yeah.
Yeah, versus just them being away from you. And I do think it's just a bit of space in between. It's letting them cry and then like standing back and checking to see what's going on before jumping in. It's waiting to see if they can come tell you, oh, this happened, while they're crying, and figuring it out. And I'm not talking in a crisis state, of course, but just with 3 boys, this happens, 5 times an hour in my home. So I think that there's a gap in between that I think some parents could shoot for, of just responding a little slower, waiting to see what's going on, not jumping in to fix it quite as quick. And it's something that I've noticed of moms just running around, and moms are just the ones that are in my kitchen, week to week. So those are my observations, but just having such an urgency to respond and then reach this and then get this, and can you get water, and can you do this? And it's a lot of stress and work. I think that in between not being around them and doing that is just it's a distance just mentally right there.
So if I listen to like any handlers of mine, they would say, remember, meet people where they are and baby steps and don't be judgy. But I'm not. If you're there, you will respond. You cannot be with them. It's impossible to say, oh, instead of waiting 5 seconds, I'm going to wait 10 seconds. It's still going to be the same thing. They're coming, Mom, I want water. Mom, he took my X-Man. Mom, this is boring. Mom, if you're there, you will be tugged at. Your heart will be tugged at, and your arm will be tugged at, and you will be tugged at, and your time will be tugged at. And so you just have to have some time where you're literally not reachable. I'm going to brag. The head of the college board wanted to talk to me about this. College board. They write the SATs, they write the ACTs. Mm-hmm. And I came over, and he'd written this wonderful essay. What we came up with in the end was this phrase, which was the idea being that we're always with them, because we think if we're not with them, either they'll need us, they'll be hurt, or they'll fall behind, right? Because we could be giving them good advice, and we could be soothing them, and we could be educating them, and instead they're just wasting their time playing with other kids. What are they getting out of that? And as we've discussed earlier, they get a lot out of just being with other kids, and some of it is frustrating and some of it is great, and all of it is educational. And so the phrase, because I'm always trying to think of phrases that could possibly beat stranger danger, and I have yet to come up with one that's as good as stranger danger. But the phrase is, for a moment to be teachable, you have to be unreachable. And I feel, I feel what you're talking about when my kids are with me and they need something, or even if they say something casually like, oh yeah, I'm going to prepare for that interview by doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, are you kidding? Don't write, that's going to sound robotic. Do it this way. Or no, what you really need to do is work the phones and find out who's worked that job first. I mean, I have great advice for, look, I'm doing it here, right? But the point is that we will always jump in, and they will learn a lot if we don't jump in. They learn a lot from us, but they learn a lot from life, from each other, from dogs, from insects, from books, from arguments, from getting lost. And so some of that time we have to allow the rest of the world to teach them and soothe them and bring them up, and not just us. So it's broken record. What's a record? I'm repeating YouTube, right? Which is that we're with them more than we need to be. And the more we're with them, the more we think we need to be.
Were you scared, Lenore, when Izzy wasn't home yet that day?
That day, no. Other days, yes.
Tell us about that. That's going to make us feel more human.
He just wasn't gone a long time that day. The other days, no, it's like, oh my God, it's getting dark. I'm the free range mom. Look what's going to happen. He's going to be murdered. Everyone's going to say, see, I told you so. That's what happens, right? I mean, nobody is immune from fear. I wish I was immune from fear. I hate the fact that my kids drive. I mean, I know they're driving when I'm not around them, but when I know that they're driving, like literally know, like here's something. I didn't know that my son was taking a trip this weekend. Somebody else told me he was taking a trip. And I think he spared me like the
Hmm.
thought of him being in a long car ride. What if he gets tired? What if he's distracted? What if his friends keep him up so late that when he's coming back, he's, falling asleep at the wheel? Blah, 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 blah. The only thing that keeps me sane is that I'm not with him all the time. Did I mention this? It's like it's really there's no way you can be a parent and not feel anxious. At least I haven't found that way.
Hmm.
So the more you know, like Wendy Vogel said, the closer you look at something, the more flaws you see, the more worried you are, the more you feel you have to step in, which is why the let go experience where the kid must go off and do something on their own is a revelation in so many ways, like to your body, even when your kid is away and you think you can't stand it, and then it's fine, and then they did well, or they screwed up and it's not the end of the world. All of this is a revelation to parents who have been told you must be with your kid all the time, or some other adult must be with them, or you must be at least electronically with them for them to be safe.
You brought up something really interesting in the book, and you've gotten more into this, and that's changing policy.
Oh,
We
yeah.
work often with the California Department of Education. We had a panel with some folks who are leaders in education, and we had the superintendent of LAUSD come to a conference recently. Got a chance to talk with him, and what kept coming up was the cell phone guidelines. And so we're at a really interesting time right now where, obviously Jonathan Haidt's book came out, and I think that has really
Oh, did
helped.
he have a book out?
Yeah, yeah.
What's it
I mean,
called?
maybe you've heard of it, but if you have heard of it, then that's another way that you might have heard of Lenore too, because Jonathan's been pretty vocal and sharing the benefits of Let Grow and letting kids have free play, which I thought,
Co-founder, right?
yeah, which that's incredible as well. How do we translate this into policy? What does it look like with cell phones? We had a legislator here in California, in Sacramento, left-leaning Democrat, who was against the cell phone guidelines that were coming out, very vocal in Sacramento just a few months ago. And her reason was that with school shootings being such a factor, how is she going to make sure her kid is safe at any given time? Now, I know my answer to this.
What's your answer?
That's not going to help your kid. In fact, it might identify them. If they're trying to be quiet and go undetected, I mean, this is terrible and hellish that we have to even consider. But like, I wanted to respond and say, look, maybe they'd be more aware of their environment and work together, since they would actually know the people in their class better. And maybe the kids who had the connection, we know that school shooters in general have the connection of feeling isolated and angry before they even commit those acts of violence. And so, of course, I had thoughts and opinions, and I wanted to say, look, I don't want my kid at school having unnecessary bullying taking place concurrently when he could be experiencing, even if it is bullying, in person and dealing with it so that he's ready.
Okay, a couple thoughts. One is that when I was doing a story about like, what about having phones if you don't have phones and there's a school shooting, I talked to school shooting experts who said they shouldn't have phones because if you're distracted by the phone, you're not paying attention to your teacher and they can ping and they make noise. There's no reason to have them. But the other thing is that, and this is going to sound weird, once again, our framing of a normal issue, like should kids have phones at schools, has gone to bullying and shooting. Right? How about like, wouldn't it make sense to kids not to have phones in school so they could talk to each other at lunch,
Mhm.
or so they could pay attention to school? We really are addicted to catastrophizing, and it's not just you; it's me too. It's this framing anything when we're talking about kids goes immediately to worst first thinking this darkest place. And it's sort of like thinking of the kids are going to be kidnapped from the bus stop if I'm not there. We can't I don't know how to stop us, but if there's some way to stop us from always thinking in terms of the very darkest, worst possible thing that we could think of ever happening to our kids, whenever we think of anything having to do with our kids, that would be a relief. And that's why this sounds like a commercial, because it sort of is, but remember, all of our materials are free. The let grow experience is really the let go experience. It's your letting go, and you're realizing that it's okay. This thing you thought you had to do, watch every second, be in touch every second. What if they're murdered? What if they're bullied? What if they're kidnapped? What if they're unhappy? What if they're hungry? What if they need a hug? So they can be okay in the world. It's sort of reminding you that it's a growing human being and not an embryo, right? It's not, you don't need to be doing this every second. You must know about attachment theory is that, you're solidly attached to somebody that loves you and you can count on, which allows you to go a little bit away because you can come back. And then you can go a little further because you can come back. They're always going to be there. But between, phones and constant supervision, there's nothing going away. And my theory now is that that's why parents are so anxious. They, the attachment theory also requires the kid to be away from the parent, which means the parent has to be away from the kid, for both of them to see that this is still solid. You're still there for me. You can handle this. We are a unit, but we're a unit because I'm in your heart and I'm in your head, not because I'm there every
That's
single
almost
second.
that's almost like object permanence at that point. We're going back in those it's like my kid and my relationship with my kids still exist.
But it was just this amazing thing to see somebody who is thinking only about young people going through their lives and achieving, right? And thinking that actually we've gotten it wrong to the point where we think that, the only, there's this idea of a teachable moment. You're there with your kid and you explain, this is how a toothpick works, or, coffee has energy giving properties. Here's why. I actually have no idea why. So he was thinking, and the way he was trying to raise his own children was to give them some independence. And it's really hard to do that if you're the only one, because you start thinking like, am I crazy, or something bad going to happen, or am I, if something bad happened to my kid, I would have to kill myself. So the only solution to a collective problem is a collective solution. And that's why if an entire school, or even just the grade, or even just the class is saying, kids, you have to go home and do something new on your own without your parents, something, it's a little bit outside your comfort zone, you got to stretch a little, that allows the parents to breathe enough to let go. And then they get this wonderful, reassuring hit of life is okay. My kid is okay. My kid is growing. Look at my kid. That allows them to do it again. We've prevented this from parents, from parents enjoying that. We've prevented parents from getting this basic feedback that would allow them to let go. And so they don't, and then they can't let go because they haven't let go. So we're really just trying to end a cycle of never letting go. It's as simple as that. And I would really love to hear, from you guys or your patients, some stories if you consider trying this. And I'm not saying you have to put them on a subway. I'm not saying you have to put them on a plane. I'm not saying you have to do anything that you find literally dangerous. But something that is a little beyond everyone's comfort zone, that you can look it up and it's literally not dangerous. It's just something you haven't done yet. I would love to hear back from you. I mean, I literally am begging you, tell me what happens, because it will be really interesting to me.
What do you tell people in a neighborhood that's not safe, or that is under-resourced?
I say that there's a couple things. One is a Let Grow Play Club is the best answer there, because you don't have to go to a scary park where there's drug dealers or shootings. You're at school, right? You're in the gym, or you're in the playground where you've been all day anyhow. You're at the same school where you've been all day. So it's not like you're in a suddenly dangerous new place, and there's no commuting. And you have the most important thing, which is a bunch of other kids there with your kid, so that they're not just at home on, safe inside on a phone or on a screen. And then the Let Grow experience, if you don't feel that your child is, going to be safe going down the block to the bodega, then have them do something in the house that they haven't done before that can really help your family out. Can you please make breakfast? I'm going to sleep in, on Saturdays. Can you, go visit grandma down the hall and spend an hour with her? Just something that, I mean, what kids want is independence, but they also want to be seen as these helping, fully human individuals who help out the unit that is their family. This I got from Jennifer Wallace's book. She writes about mattering, and I think she's really right that mattering matters. You want to feel like you're not just taking, you're contributing because not because you're so generous or you're forced to, but because you're a part of this family and you want to make things better. I mean, you had a single mom. I'm sure you were doing stuff on your own. And that, it might have felt, boring or onerous, but deep down, it also meant that she trusted you and she needed you as you did with her. And so I would say, no matter what your neighborhood, come up with something to do that's meaningful, that's a new level of independence and responsibility. And you can do that in any neighborhood.
It's great.
Part of what I love about your program and your writing is because it aligns so much with my work as a therapist, especially with kids and as a mom. We talked about that. But what do you think it would be like if every community or every school was using the Let Grow approach? Like, what changes would we see? What would our communities be like?
Wow, just put that ball on the tee. Thank you very much. I think there'd be a lot more smiling and laughing. I mean, just as we hear about, when schools are getting rid of phones, the kids are flirting again. There's more laughter in their halls. There's more noise in the lunchroom. Similarly, you'd have kids really excited to come to school because they were going to see more friends because they've met friends in different grades, right? And they knew that they were going to play, and play is the food of childhood, right? So they would have they'd have a smile on their face as they came to school. I think you'd see less absenteeism. I think you'd see a better attitude. And then one of the cool things about the Let Grow experience is that when a kid comes to school and they're like, I've heard that they like race up the stairs on the days that they are going to tell the teacher what they just did. And then the teacher gets to see, we always talk about the whole child. You really do get to see the whole child. It's like, I made tortillas. Oh my God. Well, who taught you? Well, my grandmother taught me. And then at first there was a big hole in it, but then I started making them and we had them for dinner last night. Suddenly it's more of the kid than their grades or how well they're reading, or do we need to get a one-on-one aid? It's a real full person there. You see a little bit more of their home life. And then what I heard from one school is where a lot of kids spoke Spanish at home, is that the parents who couldn't have like an English Spanish parent teacher conference, but they could text pictures like, here's my kid painting her door, or here she is holding the baby. And they were so proud that they could share something that they saw their kid doing and growing with the teacher, with the big, hoo-ha school. And so I think you'd see more kids outside again because there'd be kids going to the grocery. We've heard this, like where one kid goes to the little market and like, what are they doing here? But then it's like, I'm doing Let Grow. And then other kids start coming, oh, these are Let Grow kids. It's just, I think you'd see something that looks a little bit more like your own childhood in terms of kids doing stuff on their own, having fun, and maybe, like me, parents on the couch taking a little nap because there's a little free time.
I love that. I think a lot of school leaders are going to see and agree with everything you're saying, but there is, as you know, a lot of parent pushback on certain issues, and it's really hard to get parents in a community aligned. So how does a principal who wants to do this, how do they sell it?
Well, I think it's pretty easy sell in that it's a kid coming home saying, I want to do something new on my own. And then you talk about it with the kid. No, I don't think you're ready to make a souffle. Or if you really want to bake cookies, let me explain to you, you have to wear the mitt and you see it's hot. It's not asking the parent to do anything that they don't want to do or that the kid doesn't want to do, because it's the whole idea of what are they ready for that maybe you haven't realized yet that's going to make life better for both of you, and that's going to be fun and exciting, and everybody else is doing it. So it hasn't been a hard sell. We have close to 1,000 schools doing it as of this year, a lot because people read about it in the anxious generation. And it's good for the school. You have a more self-actualized, independent kid. We have a large charter school network that is about to pilot this because they were worried about kids smart and good, but they hit a bump in the road and they stop. And it's like, now what? And you want kids to have, like Brittany, you were talking about, you want kids to have improv skills. You want them to go, oh, this isn't working. Let me try this. Or, I'll skip that question, but I'll go to the rest of the test, as opposed to, I'm stuck. Somebody should help me, or I can't move. So I just don't see any downside, and it's all free. All the materials are free. So it's not like you've spent, as Michigan did, $50 million on a social emotional learning curriculum. It's free. And now we have some studies behind it that show that it's not even a crazy idea. It's working. So I don't see a lot of downside or pushback.
What else can you tell us that we didn't ask about Let Grow? Or
Two things. One is, we never mentioned the name of my book. It's Free Range Kids.
it's right
There
here.
you go. There you go.
Free
Oh
Range
yeah, you even
Kids.
have the second version.
I
Yeah.
even started this one, which I'm
second
enjoying.
edition.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're the only person in the world besides me who has that book.
Oh, I
Wow.
love it. I think it's hilarious.
Well, thank you. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It's called Has the World Gone Skenazy? And it's great.
So when I talked to John, we try to come up with slogans, as always, and the one we sort of lighted on recently was, if you're going to take away the phone, open the door.
Ooh, I love that.
Mm.
Say it again.
If you're going to take away the phone, open the door.
And explain what that means.
Well, no, it's just so simple. It's like, we've discussed already how children spend a lot of their time micromanaged or supervised by adults all the time, which means that there's really no exploring that you can do, because you're being watched and you're being assisted and you're being supervised. And, the games are organized by somebody else. So luckily, there's the wardrobe of Narnia, where you can escape into a world where you can, be a hero and explore new places and play new games and meet new people and be independent and feel adult. And it's the virtual world. So of course, kids are going to go there. They're not allowed any freedom in the real world, no independence, no trust, no responsibility. And then there's all of that awaiting them online. And so if you want to take away the virtual world, you have to give them back the real world, which is every bit as exciting. And in fact, there's 3 more senses. You can touch things, you can taste things, and you can smell things. So you got 5 senses going there. And we've taken that away.
You just described a grounding activity with an SEL grounding activity where you go into all 5 senses. And it's like you didn't even need a curriculum for it.
How do you like that? Right. It's called walking out the door. Right.
Wow.
And if everybody's doing it together, then you're not the crazy parent. You're not the lonely kid. There's nobody at the park. Everybody's doing this together.
Okay. Let them grow. Let them go and let them grow. Can you just say again where to go online and the whole list of the places on Insta or wherever it is?
Oh my gosh. Basically, we're always Let Grow, but sometimes we're Let Grow org for the Let Grow organization. Letgrow.org is the mothership. It's where you'll find all the free materials. It's where you'll find my blog. You'll find crime statistics. There's a little card you can print out for your kids that says, I'm not lost or neglected. And you can put your phone number on there and anybody can call if they see your kid outside. So that's it. And then every place else, Insta, Twitter, Facebook, it's Let Grow or letgrow.org. But there is one cool thing on Facebook called Raising Independent Kids. Why did we choose a different name? This is so hard to remember. But it's where parents talk to each other. It's like, hey, do you think my kid should start music lessons? Or I lost my kid for 15 minutes yesterday. I was going crazy. Should I, how can I deal with the fear? It's just it's like a lot of nice people talking to each other. There aren't trolls that I've heard. And just really asking, it's not that easy to let go. It's not, in a culture that has told us that, kids are in constant danger and you're bad if you're not with them every single second. So it's people asking literally like, what do I do if I'm afraid? Or what do I do if I want to, I want to be with them, but not with them quite as much. It's just, it's people helping each other. It's really good. Raising independent kids.
I love that. And they can get support there because you're right. There's going to be some anxiety involved when you do this or when you start to do this. And talking to the folks maybe outside your neighborhood who have also started is a great idea.
Right.
Lenore, it's been incredible. A lot of wisdom that
a little stupidity.
we need. No, great
true.
Jokes, a lot of wisdom. And can't wait to see what happens next, because I really do believe, as someone who it's very close to my heart, mental health in schools. It's a lot of us, it's our life's work here at Wellness Together. But I haven't really seen anything else that is going to balance out that attention that phones are currently taking when phones get limited or when the use gets limited. So to actually balance that out and invite our kids into, like you said, the real world, back into the real world, and to experience it, to enjoy it, and to really acknowledge that life is short and there are so many things that we get to experience here. Taking the subway, baking, and hanging out with friends being maybe at the top of the list. So thank you so much for being here. I hope to talk to you again. I want to check in and we'll
You have
hopefully
to talk again. I have to hear what happens with everyone.
I can't wait.
All right, listen, thank you for indulging me for all this time.
I can't wait to see what happens next as we do collectively take a look at how we get back into the real world.
I'll meet you there.
So what'd y'all think? We just talked to Lenore. She's got some great wisdom.
I loved getting to talk with her. I thought it was really great to hear her advice for parents and what she's doing with her nonprofit. I think that was a great conversation.
When did you first hear about free range kids, Brittany?
I think about 10 years ago, maybe a little over 10 years. Yeah, about 10 years ago. I read her book when I had my son and when I was on a break from working as a therapist with kids. So I was reading it as a parent, but also as a therapist specializing with working with little ones and families.
That makes sense. Do you remember who told you about it?
I don't. I think I actually I think it might have been referenced in another book that I loved that came out near that time, which is called Nurture Shock. Do you remember that book?
No.
Super good.
Okay.
Loved
Shout
it.
out Nurture Shock. We gotta put it on your list. I think my favorite part of Free Range Kids, the second edition, the book that we read to kind of prep, was there's a whole chapter on Halloween and letting your kids sort of be a little bit more independent on a night that actually by statistics ends up being a relatively safe night, across the country, at least here
Yeah.
in the United States. And she makes this great point. And I don't know anyone my age who's, in their 40s at this point. And if you did celebrate Halloween, we had this ritual that really did kind of bum me out every time because I couldn't eat my candy because until my mom had to really kind of like take a look at all of it. It's not
Yeah.
like she x-rayed it or something, but the whole idea was that there was someone going around and putting like sharp objects or poison or needles into
Right.
like Snickers bars. And I can't imagine like my childhood being raised by my mom is dominated by a few different major things. I would say Phil Donahue, Oprah, Oprah sort of walking out, losing a bunch of weight, and just like carrying out a wagon of fat on stage. And the third thing was um, razor blades in Snickers bars. I can't even look at a Snickers bar today and not think about how some sicko is just enjoying, ruining people's Halloween. But the point she makes in the book, it's kind of a spoiler for the chapter, but there's not one case ever documented. And I mean, honestly, if you grew up in the 80s, you would think it was every fifth house
Oh, for sure.
was prepping for weeks before Halloween with, poisons and needles and just going, making sure they had it all ready. But and it was like a foundational belief about the world for me because I thought, wow, the world really must be terrible if someone is doing this. But as it turns out, as in a lot of cases, we were worried about something that actually has never happened to date.
I remember thinking something similar about the reading the book about the statistics, not quite as good. I mean, there being zero occurrences of the Halloween candy is that's pretty stunning. But I remember thinking the same thing about kidnappings, like growing up in the 90s in the Bay Area. I don't know if all kids were or if it was just me, but every day I was worried I was going to get kidnapped. Someone was going to crawl through my window and take me.
Well,
And
Hannah does edit this podcast, and she hates when I bring up the 80s and 90s. She said that, a lot of times people just don't even know the words that I'm saying. But Brittany, I'm so glad you're here because kidnapping in the 80s and 90s, you would have thought it was happening like there was like a school bus going around and just picking up kids, and instead of taking them to
yeah,
school, they just napped them.
yeah.
It was wild, and as it turns out, that wasn't nearly as bad either. I feel like kidnapping and quicksand. I feel like every movie in the 80s and 90s, like if there
Oh,
was like a problem, like a perilous
oh yeah.
scene, you would think that people were either going to get kidnapped or just be walking like a typical like, nature area and just get fallen straight into the
For
ground.
sure. Yeah. Like you needed like earthquake drills and the like look for a 2x4 board in
Yeah,
case quicksand happens.
we used to play that game all the time. It was like, can you like build a little bridge over the quicksand because liquefied earth was definitely hot in the media and in like shows. I think every writer was just like, hey, we got to put some quicksand in there. Kids aren't going to watch this.
Which honestly was way before the 24-hour news cycle. Like all of these fears were very real, and I don't know why they felt like they were happening all the time, but that was before, we had cell phones or any of that. So,
Do you remember? I remember being at my grandma's house who was always watching the news, which honestly, even then was probably one of the most terrifying things I did as a kid was watch the local news. But they would have this like screen come on at 10 o'clock of empty swings at like a park during the night, and it would say it's like a terrifying voice, like it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Do you remember
yikes.
that?
I don't remember that at all.
I'm a
No.
little older than you, so that was a big thing. Do you know where your kids are? Hannah, what is this? Is this your worst nightmare? Because most of this happened before you're born. So,
Not my worst nightmare, but I can't really relate.
Yeah, I do think, yeah, there's scary stuff back then. We still deal with scary stuff. But speaking of Lenore, the empathy for moms that I gathered thinking about where our anxiety is just now
mhm.
thinking about, and one other terrifying 90s thing that we didn't talk about was the lead-in for Unsolved Mysteries. Horrifying.
Preach. What was it?
You remember the music and like that creepy visuals that they had?
Yeah,
Yeah.
people love that. What is it though? Like, I feel like I'm going to turn into Jerry Seinfeld's. What's the deal with people and mysteries? Like, why do people like horrible impressions like that? Because everyone's going to write in how much they love my Jerry Seinfeld. But why do we like to see Law and Order? What does it do for us? Because it's like always the most disgusting. Like if you just sit and read the captions or the summary before you watch an episode of Law and Order, it's the most grisly scene. And it's like if it wasn't bad enough, if the murder wasn't bad enough, they're gonna have to like sexualize it somehow so that it's like even more disturbing.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the most popular shows ever. What
I,
is it? What's the what is it about true crime and Law and Order and those things?
I think it's the controlled burn idea, like
What do you mean?
you have something completely terrifying. Life is already scary and difficult and all of these things. And then if you can just focus that onto something that's not real on Law and Order, you're like scratching that itch of thinking about something terrifying because you know it's there, but it's this fake.
The anxiety, it evens out and it makes you feel like there's a reason to feel as anxious as you feel, and that feels congruent or good.
Yeah, nailed it. I think so.
Okay.
It's something less stressful than whatever is happening in real life. Nobody wants to turn on the news and be, paying attention to all the awful things there. So like Law and Order is like, well,
Well, Lenore brought up what was it? The familiarity. That's not what it was. Availability bias. Like
It's the
if,
availability heuristic. It's basically you're gonna grab, like when she was talking about kidnappings and things like that, where that's like a lot of like parents' fears for their children, or like projecting onto that. It's like that is coming up in your brain because it's what's available. So the definition is a mental shortcut that involves judging the likelihood of an event based on how easily a relevant example comes to mind. So it's available because if you Google it, or if you turn on the news, or like you're gonna hear statistics about that, you're gonna feel scared about that. So then you're gonna feel like, oh, well, this is gonna happen.
Would the news even be a thing if it wasn't for this? Like, would people watch it?
It's a good question.
I don't watch the news, so, and I don't have social media that feeds me the news in any form. So it's probably just whatever's in your kind of, tickler system of your brain is accessible memory of my neighbor told me this happened to my aunt. I remember this almost happened to me, and that's the thing you pull from if it's not the news.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, and you said the tickler system. I'm doing that for all the people who wish they could have asked you that and double back. And so,
Do you remember taking cognitive neuroscience in school? Like, they
yeah,
had
I
me
was
a
a TA
therapist.
for it. Brag much. I was a TA for it.
I love that class, but
Yeah.
I remember understanding short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory as this actual like mental tickler system.
Yeah.
Because I also worked at a clinic before that and had an actual tickler system because it was like paper charts, so I understood like this like
Are
little tiny Rolodex like thing on your desk that you're like filing through.
is that why it's called a tickler system? Because you just did like a tickle movement to the file. Is that what? Because
I
I'm so
don't,
interested. I'm not familiar.
what? You don't know
I'm
what it is?
no.
I don't know why it's called that. I really hope that it's because you're like sorting through it on your desk in this way. But it's basically a file cabinet that's very small. On your desk is where I
Uh-huh.
think most of them are. So imagine a Rolodex. But like when I worked at a clinic in college, you're going through like as like, oh, okay, here's in January, these are all the people who are going to need, their
To laugh when you tickle
babies
them.
babies vaccinations, and then you put them back and
Oh,
they're like, oh, February it's going to be these families that are all sorted through here they're going to need. So like that's a tickler system. But I remember in cognitive neuroscience learning that and like trying to make sense, like, okay, that makes sense, and then after a while you just like purge this working memory system that's like gone and like replaced with new things.
got it.
Or if something traumatic happens or you need to come back to it, it like flags it in your brain like
It's
you would on your tickler system.
okay. Well, I appreciate how many times you've said it. I think it makes sense, like from an evolutionary standpoint, that the tickler system would save your life, because if you learn a story or you learn a piece of information and we are automatically, we have that bias towards negativity, because you got to remember the negative things, because that'll keep you safe. If you are in a situation running from a bear, you need to know what
Right.
the signs are that bear is around, and that's something you need to remember, and not necessarily some joke that you heard on a podcast.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying too is it shows just that we're all dealing with that. And that's why one of the things that came up for me a little bit talking with Lenore is I feel like any parent is waking up like, I just want to control every little thing about what my kid is doing today. I want to see them every moment, reach for their cups. I want to get them all these things. I want to freak out if they fall down. I just don't think like we're all dealing with that level of stress, and we grew up with these stories. And I don't know. I feel for some of the parents in the conversation because I don't think that they're waking up hoping to be like that. And I do like the let go piece for having an actionable, like, oh, you can try these skills, because we do need kids to learn that. We need communities to get stronger in connecting with each other and teaching kids how to have, like what you said, Marlon, like distress tolerance, self-efficacy, like coping skills, problem solving, relying on each other.
She also is at a point in life where her kids are okay, but I also liked that she was honest about her own anxiety. And even now, like as an adult, like she didn't even like
Yeah.
that her kids were out driving.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good balance. Human.
I thought so too. And be able to acknowledge that that's stressful and that's just something that you deal with, not something you have to stop dealing with and avoid and stop at all costs.
Yeah. Overall, I think we could all use that reminder. It was helpful for me to read through the book and just say, how much of this is me and my own anxiety, and how much would it help if maybe I could engineer my life to be a little bit less stressful so that I had more room for my own distress tolerance for
Yeah.
when I want to let my kids do something out of my sight or something that would help build their independence. So,
Yep. 100%.
A theme that was never explicitly said, but I think really was like a thread through the whole conversation was curiosity. And I think it's something that, we're all human, we're all naturally curious beings, but children express that more. It's their first time being alive. And so they're naturally going to be more curious and really just leaning into that and allowing them to have curiosity and follow that instead of shutting it down, I think really plays a big role in everything that we just talked about.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
So letting kids follow their own curiosity, and that can be a good guide for the independence piece.
totally.
I like that.
that. I love that, Hannah, especially after some of the conversations you all have had recently with curiosity leading to compassion, leading to connection. Like curiosity is a good open door for many other strong mental health skills and people skills we all need.
It's also a great parenting technique because it's not threatening. It's sort of like, well, how was the day to day? What's that class like? What's that relationship like at school? Or, I think
Yeah.
I try to be genuinely curious with our boys. So,
Yeah.
all right. It was great seeing you all, Brittany. I think we have to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Watch out for quicksand, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected with us at thishelpspodcast.com.